So, welcome back to a channel update, and this is something that I felt like I needed to do to follow up from the last one, to be honest, because it hasn't really panned out how I would have liked for various reasons. Part of it is my own fault, really, in the sense that I kind of underestimated what my new role with regards to my employment actually would entail. I thought I would have a little bit more free time, and technically speaking I do, but not to the extent where it's been too comfortable to do things in the normal way that I have been in the past. But part of it is also sort of the rumbling on of the same issue that has been going on for a while, to be honest. But we'll go through that as we go through the topics. Again, there's really, it's to try and make it so that I'm not really rambling at the beginning or end of some of the regular videos that I do, because that's not really the best place to get information across, whereas its own video, even though far fewer people actually watch these, so in terms of how many people actually know what's going on, it will be slightly less, but this is, I think, the best place and the best format to do these sorts of things in, really. And I'm going to be readjusting my schedule again, and it's not going to be as rigidly structured as it has been in the past. I think the only dead certainty really is that I'm going to continue to, provided the content is there of course, continue to do a definite video on Saturdays, and anything else really is going to be an additional. Like, for the most part I think it will still be 2 a week, but it's no longer going to be sort of hard and fast Wednesdays and Saturdays. It could be a different day during the week, or it could just be a skip. Like, we did have one of those. I think by the time this video releases it will be exactly 1 week since I missed the Wednesday slot, partly because there wasn't actually a suitable video to put in that position, but also because I simply didn't have enough time to record anything anyway. So again, that sort of two-pronged problem. So that's really the situation. It's, in a way, it's a reduction of what I'm putting out, because it means that things are a little bit more ad hoc, but technically speaking it's not. For the vast majority of the time, the amount coming out will be exactly the same. And I suppose the reason why, I think, is really the most important things. There's two main reasons, as I've kind of alluded to already. The first is that work is still in the way more than I thought it would be. Now, maybe it was a little bit naive of myself to assume that I would have oodles more free time now that I'm effectively in a management role as opposed to going away. It just means that I'm still just as busy, it's just in a slightly different way to how it was before. It does mean that it's easier to fit in than it was before, because I do actually, I'm not away with no access to my stuff, but it is still very, very difficult. And in terms of obviously the energy that you have to put into doing various things, it's a problem. And it's still something that I'm trying to work through, especially considering, like, later on in the year I'm going to be looking for my own place. Buying property is notoriously time consuming, so that's something else that is sort of looming large on the horizon as well. But there will come a time where everything does settle down, and at that moment things will become a little bit easier to navigate, but it's not the sort of thing that I can put any sort of time scale on, because I don't know. This is the sort of thing which can be resolved in a matter of weeks, or it could be as much as over a year. It's one of those. It's something that I have. I have very little experience with being in a management role in a company in the past, and I have no experience in sort of buying my own property and that sort of thing. Everything a little bit new in that regard. So trying to fit the YouTube stuff in with the rest of life as it goes along has become more difficult, and that is a problem that everyone faces, I'm sure. But this, in many ways, is actually something which is kind of easier to deal with, because it's the sort of thing that planning and organisation can help adjust to. The second reason is a little bit more difficult to reconcile with, and that is, of course, burnout. This has an impact in a number of ways. One is the fact that obviously it becomes a little bit more of a drag to start doing these things. I've been doing this for a while now. Like, it's something that I started at the near to the beginning of when I was at university, and now obviously I've been out of university for a few years, and I'm sort of moving my way up in the world, as it were. And this is when you do something for that length of time, you need to try and think of ways to freshen it up, otherwise it does become stale, and that has become a problem, because branching out into other things has been quite difficult. I've kind of pigeonholed myself in many ways into doing very specific, very niche stuff on YouTube, which is fine. It means that people know what they want from me, but it also is a little bit of a problem when things don't get freshened up, and we're starting to really run into a problem in that regard, I think. Partially because, one of the consequences of the burnout is that if I'm going to put out videos at this rate, I simply do not want to play the game, and I feel bad every single time that people come to me and say, hey, do you want to play the game? And I don't, because very often it's at the weekend, and at that point I've already done some recording, I've rendered it, and that usually is an hour and a half to 2 hours of my weekend day, and I don't want to spend any more time on Medieval 2. And it's because, again, that cumulative thing of having done so much of it over the years that now it's getting to the point where if it's treading over the same old ground, it's difficult, isn't it? I don't want to get to the position where I resent the game as a whole, whether it's recording it or playing it, either one. If you do too much of it, you will end up resenting something, and that's not a position I want to get to. I'm not there yet, but I feel as though if I were to continue with the schedule, as it were, try and do my role, which is to be better in the community, which we'll get onto that later in the video. I think that'll probably be the closing remarks, because I do need to do that if I'm going to actually do my job properly in that regard. But it's a problem, isn't it? It's one of those where something freshening up does need to happen, and part of that is on me, and part of that is also on the game itself, because just for context, I mean, the problem of retreading old ground continuously, it's not completely the case, because obviously I have been doing new patch previews for about a year at this point, maybe even longer, and that's new stuff. Obviously people have made fantastic new maps in Reforged, and people have been making new stuff in it, but there is an element of retreading old ground. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that the lack of a new patch has harmed Reforged. The amount of time it's taken has harmed Reforged pretty seriously. And just for context, I mean, the old version of the game, the public build of the game, was the one that was being utilised before I even got my job. I was a graduate when I got this job, and now I'm in management, and we're still on the same version of the game. I remember having, this is completely unrelated really, but I remember ranting to some friends of mine about, the video game industry as a whole. This situation is very different to that, but the end result is kind of the same, in the sense that we have, if you take a regular AAA video game, it takes 8 to 10 years to make, and then when it comes out, it is what it is. But it feels like everything takes forever. In that case, it's a little bit different, because of course, what it takes to make a AAA game in the modern era, it takes a ton of time and tons of people crunching. Whereas in this case, I kind of get the impression, and I'm putting words into other people's mouths here, that at least partially, busy schedules and burnout affect more than just me with regards to Reforged. Otherwise, I feel as though we would have had the new patch. Things are in the final stretch now of that, at the very least, and this is the sort of thing where it's coming to the end of the road with regards to the old version being the public build, and that's good. But it's a case of we've had a few delays again, and I hope that we're coming to the end of that now, because it is needed. Because you can tweak things forever if you want. You can continue to tweak things forever. But I do know that the inner community want to release things, and that's another point to how I think the lack of the new patch has harmed Reforged, considering the amount of time it's taken, because the vast majority of the stuff that you see from me will include the core members of the Reforged community, because they're the ones with access to the versions that people want. And my big concern is that if it gets left much longer, I don't think enough people will come back. And that would be a disaster, because it means all of this has been, not for naught, but certainly it's not been as impactful as maybe it once could have been. And I hope that that's not the case. And it's not a slight against the core members of the community at all, but it is literally the channel as it is at the moment continues to exist because of a handful of people. A little over a dozen people really are regulars within the testing community, and it's one of the reasons why I think the amount of tweaking that can be done from here needs to be concise. And I know that the lead developers, I think, share this sentiment. And again, it's me putting words into other people's mouths once again. And, you know, all of this is very rich coming from me, but these are all of my observations of what has been going on over the course of the past, I guess, year, maybe a little bit less. And again, all of this will be a moot point if the release schedule, as I understand it, gets held to. And hopefully it does, because, again, like I said, I think it is necessary. But again, life and burnout, I think, have taken their toll on more than just myself. But hopefully we're at the tail end of that, and we can start to freshen things up. And obviously, you know, I've just had I've put in my 2 pennies worth about the game, really, but also myself, I haven't been as active in the community as I should be, and as I've mentioned, like, I feel bad every time. It's mainly, I think, he's called Sir Turtle on Discord, but it's TS Niehoff, I think, has very often, you know, invited me to games, and I just don't want to, because, again, like I said, I can't put out the videos at the rate that I do and play the game without not enjoying it, basically. It's a tightrope that's being walked at the moment, but that isn't really good enough, considering, you know, the role in the community that I've kind of fallen into, really, is, you know, being the one that puts out Reforged videos by far the most regularly of anyone who does it. Maybe with a new update, you know, more people will get involved once again in that regard, but again, when the new patch comes out, I kind of need to make a concerted effort to be a little bit more active, considering, you know, the position that I hold, you know, mostly by accident rather than by design. But yeah, that is what it is, and hopefully, as I said, with the freshening up of the new version and reorganising the schedule is definitely a necessity. I think that's certainly shown itself to me within the past few months. That will make all the difference. Again, just reorganising it and seeing things from a different point of view can make all the difference, and hopefully then the spark will come back, but we won't know until the time comes. So yeah, a bit of a weird update this, because most of it, I think, is giving context to the reason why everything has been a little bit slow and a little bit plodding from myself, and, you know, a lot of it is me also, you know, giving my theories on why that is. I mean, obviously I know from my perspective with certainty why I've not been maybe as effective as I could have been, but we'll see. It's one of those situations where we can only wait and see what happens from here, I suppose. But like I said, readjustment of the schedule is really the main thing of this video. Like, the Saturdays will remain, and then I think sort of the extra stuff will be worked in as and when it's appropriate as well. So yeah, bit of a weird channel update. It's been, you know, a little bit less bullet pointy than the ones I've done in the past, but I think I felt it needed to be made, just because I feel like, especially recently, the kind of videos that have been being put out, obviously the tournament has really saved my bacon in that regard, with regards to being able to do regular stuff, and something that people want to see, but we'll see how it develops moving forwards as well. So yeah, I hope you found this somewhat informative, and hope you'll join me for whatever is next.